imported emissions, that is the emissions outside the EU 28, the third row from the bottom in the table, is higher than the uncertainty associated with the emissions produced within the EU 28. If you have any questions to that, please feel free to ask those later. So enough about theory now. Let's have a look at the results. On the top left graph, you can see the development of global emissions since 1995. Note that these emissions exclude residential emissions as well as emissions from private road transport, as these are not traded and I therefore did not consider them in the model. The green line on the bottom shows you EU 28 territorial emissions, and the blue line slightly above the green line shows you EU 28 consumption-based emissions. In 2010, the EU produced about 12% in global emissions and consumed about 15% of global emissions. Overall, consumption-based emissions increased by less than 5% since 1995, and production-based emissions even decreased. This in turn means that the share of emissions embedded in imports increased, as we can see in the graph on the bottom left. The share of embedded emission produced within the EU is the blue area, and the share of emissions embedded in production outside the EU is the white area. The share of imported emissions in total embedded emissions increased